It's Friday, May 4th, 2012. May the 4th be with you for all of you Star Wars people out there like myself, and you're watching XDA TV. We had some major news this week as Samsung officially unveiled their newest flagship device, the Samsung Galaxy S3. This was, of course, at the Samsung Unpacked 2012 event. The device is said to feature a Samsung Exynos quad-core processor. Speaking of which, there's a full write-up on that exact processor over at xda-developers, which you probably ought to check out. I will have a link to that down in the video description. Other than that quad-core processor, the rest of the specs are pretty much on par with the rest of the devices that we've seen come out recently, such as an 8-megapixel rear-facing camera that does 1080p video. It does have a zero lag shutter, which is pretty awesome for those of you who are photographers out there. It's got a 1.9 megapixel front-facing camera that for some reason only does 720p video, but hopefully it's going to be halfway decent. I believe it's got 1 gig of RAM like most of the other devices we're seeing now. It's got a 720p display, but it is a 4.8-inch display, and it's Pentile instead of the Super AMOLED Plus, which I know a lot of people are kind of upset about. Some of the cool things it's going to feature, though, it's supposed to have a wireless charging kit available similar to the Palm Touchstone that you could get for the Palm Pixie and the Palm Pre and the touchpad and whatever else that Palm made. It has a function they're calling Smart Stay, which basically will wake up the phone when you pick it up and look at it. It keeps track of your eye movements just to make sure that you are actually looking at the screen, so if you're reading an ebook, it will keep the phone awake. If you look away from it for an extended period of time, it will of course turn the screen off to save battery life. Don't get me started on that one though, because that raises all sorts of privacy concerns for me. I think I posted something on Google Plus earlier about how I'm going to have to start wearing pants if I actually pick up this device, because I don't want a camera watching me all the time. Additionally, they've added a feature they're calling S-Beam, which is basically the Android Beam feature that you've got on the Galaxy Nexus, but on steroids. You can transfer a 10 megabyte file in, I think, 2 seconds, and a 1 gigabyte file in just 3 minutes, if I remember correctly. Do feel free to correct me on any of this stuff in the comment section below if I am wrong. I'm doing a lot of this from memory and a lot of this from the article. I did watch the presentation while I was at work today, so I did gather a lot of the information for myself from that. And of course, with all this powerful technology, you would expect for it to have a crappy battery life, but apparently they've decided to go ahead and pack in a 2100 milliamp hour battery. So hopefully it will last significantly longer than the Galaxy Nexus's battery. I don't know about you, but my experience with it was not very good. There's also a Siri-like functionality built into it, sort of a personal digital assistant where you hit a button and you ask it a question like, what's the weather like in city blah blah blah, and it will give you an answer. A part of me wonders how long it's going to be before Apple comes up to them and says, no, you can't do that, sue, sue, sue. And then a part of me wonders, do we really need it? I guess it is sort of a cool function. I don't know. Would you use a function like that? I can see myself using it because I do use the speech-to-text function quite a bit on my phone. But I've found more often than not, because I do have a bit of a Kentucky accent, I have to repeat myself to the phone, and that can just get frustrating. Now, the one real gripe I will say about all of this, and it's not really mentioned in the article, but someone in the comments said something about it. Apparently, in the US, we aren't going to get the quad-core processor. Now, the Qualcomm processor they're replacing it with is supposed to be just as good, just as powerful, but it's a dual-core processor. And of course, cores don't really make that big of a difference. It's really about the speed and the performance and how well it integrates into the rest of the hardware. But I will say there's a part of me that feels a little bit cheated by that, kind of like the HTC One X and how we didn't get the quad-core on that. I know it has something to do with incompatibilities with our current LTE system, and they're working on it. But there's a part of me that says, why are you releasing quad-core devices and not making sure that it works on all sorts of systems? Why blame the systems as opposed to blaming the actual hardware and the setup and the design and everything? I'm not qualified to be making any sort of judgment calls on that, though, of course. I would expect that Adam might have something to say about it at some point in the near future. You may be on the lookout for an article coming out. And to close up about the S3, of course, there is a new forum added over at the XDA forums if you'd like to go check that out. Moving on to other non-Galaxy S3 related news, but still in the Samsung vein for a little while now. An article was released this week on the xda-developers site saying there is an official version of CyanogenMod 9 available for the Samsung Galaxy Note. However, after reading through the article, it appears it's not an official CyanogenMod 9 build. It's actually built by Team Hacksung and XDA-recognized developer Explode Wild. So it's not exactly CyanogenMod 9, but we're getting there. As always, if you do decide to try this out, make sure to make backups and do testing and read through the forum threads and just make sure you know know what you're getting into before trying it out. Alright, that's enough Samsung stuff for right now. Let's talk a little bit about HTC. Some good news came out this week for owners of the HTC HD2. As you know, it's an older device, and a lot of people probably didn't expect for it to get Ice Cream Sandwich, but it looks like there are ROMs in the works for it. But the one thing that was missing on the HD2 was graphical hardware acceleration. Well, thanks to XDA senior members Xylograph and Secure CRT and XDA recognized developer Rick1995, it looks like they've got that working. They utilized some elements of a driver for the HTC Desire to make it work, and all in all, it is a huge step forward in making Ice Cream Sandwich development more easily done for the HD2. And as a bit of a personal aside there, I do have to say it's amazing to see such a community involvement in an older device like this. I'm hoping to see a lot more coming out of things like the Droid X, which I personally own, in the very near future. It looks like not all of the Ice Cream Sandwich ROMs and kernels for this device have gotten this new functionality yet, but there are a couple out there, one based on CyanogenMod 9 and one based on the AOKP, so definitely go check those out if you are interested in having Ice Cream Sandwich on your HD2. Moving on to a little bit of Android app news. If you're like one of the millions of other people that are using Facebook on your Android device, and you notice that in some of the most recent updates they added a Facebook Messenger and a Facebook Camera app to your apps drawer, that's not very cool in my opinion, and a lot of other people seem to think the same way. That is why XDA senior member Mockzor has released an application to the Google Play Store that will go ahead and remove those application icons from your application drawer. Doesn't actually uninstall anything, just sort of hides it to keep it out of your way because a lot of people won't be using it. It only takes a couple of minutes to get it installed, but it does require that your device be rooted, so keep that in mind. Go ahead and check out the thread over on xda-developers and see if it's applicable for you, see if you want the app or anything like that. Give the developer some kudos for going ahead and doing away with something that a lot of people will find really obnoxious. And speaking of applications for Android and developing apps for Android specifically, a couple of tutorials were released this week by XDA Elite recognized developer and fellow XDA TV producer Adam Outler. The first one being the wrap-up all-around want to start programming something for Android, start here with here's how you learn Java stuff, here's how you set up your environment, lots and lots of information there. I'm actually going to be reading through it myself because I've never done an Android app personally. And of course you might have already seen it earlier this week. I think it was actually yesterday that it came out. His How to Build an Android App Part 2, building the root app. I definitely have to applaud Adam on this series. Bringing the developers back into XDA developers is a huge thumbs up from me. That is all I've got for you this week, though there was a lot more stuff that happened over on the XDA site, so please head on over to xda-developers.com to see what else happened. As always, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.